Maximize Your Influence is your podcast for the latest persuasion, sales, and negotiation techniques. Our mission is to help you influence on command, anyone, anytime, anywhere. Your host is the author of Persuasion IQ, Laws of Charisma, and the best-selling book, Maximum Influence. Now, your host, Kurt Mortensen.
Hey, here's a quick snippet from my podcast, Maximize Your Influence. Hope you enjoy. Subscribe at MaximizeYourInfluence.com.
What are some of the things that we should keep in mind as it pertains to optimism and persuasion?
Well, first of all, I love what Winston Churchill said. He says, a pessimist sees a difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. And it's how you see the world. It's your frame of reference. And that's the key thing here when you really look at the research, that when you're an optimist, it actually, as we talked about, adds years to your life. You have stronger social networks and social support, meaning you know more people willing to help you. You have higher levels of motivation, persistence, and performance. I mean, it just goes on how these things look. And belief in optimism or good luck produces a positive impression that causes feelings of optimism and confidence. And the bottom line is pessimistic people give up twice as fast as optimistic people. And it's really important how this understands. You have to realize, though, that pessimism does repel charisma. And that's very important to understand as we get into this and how this works out and to understand how it works. Now, the key factor here is when you're optimistic, and we've met the people that are too optimistic, that are too energetic, that you're like, whoa, take it down a notch, and the way they answer questions. And it's basically how you see the world. You're looking around corners. You can expect bad things to happen, but overall, you know that things are going to work out. And that is the key factor, is that you know overall that things will eventually work out. You keep going, you keep that positive attitude, and that makes a huge difference in what people are able to do.
Absolutely right, because they have that adage in sales and in marketing that most sales close after the 6th or 7th attempt, I believe, is it? And if you're just inherently a negative person, you're not even going to make it that far.
That's exactly right. And so optimism equals success. And realize that a lot of people talk about, you got to have PMA, because you can lump attitude with optimism. And the way I like to define attitude is attitude comes from your expectations. If you expect to have a rotten day and you expect everyone to say no, if you expect everyone to suck the life out of you, it happens. And so a lot of it is adjusting our expectations. And a lot of people, when you talk about attitude, are chameleons. They wait for someone to cut them off, and that's going to dictate their whole attitude for the day. And so I'm not talking about that PMA, or you've seen the movie The Secret. I think a lot of our listeners have.
Yeah.
If you're sitting on the couch with your PMA thinking, I'm the best and people like me and I'm wealthy, they're going to haul you off. That's a form of delusion. I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm glad you have a good attitude. But if you don't have an action plan, if you can't get your butt off the couch, they will haul you off and hide the key because you're not thinking straight.
PMA being positive mental attitude. I don't know if you covered that, but I'm guessing that's what you mean.
That's exactly what I mean. And so they go hand in hand, having a good attitude, expecting great things to happen, knowing that, hey, you might hit a few roadblocks along the way. You might lose a few of the races. You might lose a few of the deals, but overall, you're going to become financially independent. You're going to make it happen. And that's what great influential people have. They're going to have a bad phone call, and someone's going to beat them up, and they're going to call them names. You're going to get that bad feeling inside. But that great persuader can turn on a dime. They can quickly look at a vision board or think of their goals or think of their loved ones, or take a quick walk, or smoke something they're not supposed to. Oh, no, I didn't mean to put that one in there. But they have the ability to quickly turn from a very negative attitude to a positive attitude and realize that rejection's not personal. They don't know you that well. They don't know your product that well. They might be having a bad day, but you've got to quickly go from a negative attitude or pessimism to optimism, because when you make that next phone call, you have that next meeting, you do that next presentation, if you're not mentally in it, you're going to suck the life out of your audience. They're going to sense something is wrong, and you're going to lose the deal.
Absolutely. Dwelling on that does you absolutely no good in sales. What does you good is to learn from it and move on absolutely as quickly as possible. I had, this was about 6 months ago, a rather large open purchase contract with an institutional buyer of real estate, and I was going to make a significant amount of money on the transaction, and I was pretty excited. You know, you start spending the money in your head. I don't know. You've probably done that. I think we've all spent the money before we've got it before. And I was falling for that one, hook, line, and sinker in this case. And the night before we were supposed to close, I get a call from my selling partner who told me that he got an email and that the purchaser was backing out. And this was not good news. I mean, I was furious. I was depressed and angry, all in the same feeling somehow. And there had been some mistakes that I made in the contract and in the whole process that may have prevented it. I noted those and talked to one of my mentors who told me, look, learn from it, and the sooner you can forget about this and shake it off and get back to work and put your head down, the better it is. Because the fact is, you can't do anything about it right now. But a good attitude and getting back to work is going to be what recovers from this. And that's just what you have to do, even though sometimes those big orders don't close.
And that's where people get sucked into that blame and pointing fingers and whose fault is it and how could that happen to me? And it's just a downward spiral, and people can sense that. And you just got to bounce back and know that it's eventually going to work out. Sure, it hurts. Sure, it's painful. Sure, you got to distance yourself from a reality for a little bit. But when people get stuck in that blame, when they're pointing the fingers and they don't take ownership like you just did, you made some mistakes. You could have done a better job. You could have done something different. That alone is a mark of greatness, because those who point fingers and want to blame and someone has a better territory, it's the economy, it's the government, it's just a downward spiral. And I've done this before with success seminars. I have people say, well, go ahead and list the 10 top reasons you're not as successful as you want to be. And what is the one they forgot the most?
Themselves.
And that's true until you point the finger at yourself and realize, yeah, maybe I should have done this or changed this or adapted this. That's where true greatness comes, because now you fix it. Because when you're blaming somebody else, you can't fix it because it's never your fault.
That's so frustrating, dealing with people like that who are not able to look in the mirror or admit that they had something to do with the negative outcome. What a turnoff, and what a way to get people out of your life. Be something like that. We're talking about this when things go wrong and still having the optimistic attitude. And we're talking about it in the context of sales and persuasion. I think it's even harder when it comes to personal relationships, right? Because we're selling and we're persuading and influencing in personal relationships all the time. And when something goes wrong, that's obviously much harder to repair. But we still have to learn from it and pick ourselves up and move along and try to fix it as best as we can. But a lot harder, because losing a good client, or okay, they're not going to be a client anymore. But having something go wrong when it comes to influencing or persuading a child, for example, that's tough.
That's huge, because no one can influence in the long term with negative attitudes or pessimism. And we are more influential, even become charismatic, when we can turn people's negativity into something more positive, because we know that positive people are easier to influence than negative people. And so we have to look at the world in a different way. We have to move away from drowning ourselves in the current challenge, spend time looking for who's to blame, instead we just find the solution. When you hit bumps, when you hit bumps, you don't stop to whine or complain or think it's not fair. You look for other resources, strategies to make it through those bumps, because that's what makes the difference, because you can be more optimistic. There are things you can do to become more optimistic.
Yeah, the listeners, and you've probably heard it, Kurt, but I think it illustrates the point quite nicely, is that parable of the farmer and the mule, who he had a deep well on his property, and he heard this crazy noise coming from one of the mules on the property. He's going around, he's hearing this noise, he's thinking, what is wrong with this animal? And finally he realizes, oh, you know what, it's got to be in the well. And he goes over to the well, and sure enough, the mule had fallen down to the bottom and is down there trying to get out, making all kinds of crazy noises, and it's just quite unsettling. And I didn't make this story up, but obviously this farmer is a little bit psycho. He gets the bright idea that, you know what, I've been meaning to fill in this well. and that mule was old and sick and useless anyway. Let's get the neighbors over here and let's just start filling in this well and kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. So the neighbors all come over with the farmer. They're tossing dirt into the well, and the mule, every time a load of dirt would land on its back, he would go nuts and he would shake that dirt off, and then he would step up. And they kept doing this, and the mule would shake and the dirt would fall off of his back, and he kept stepping up until eventually he's looking the farmer in the eyes and had climbed his way up out of the well. And that's all you can really do, is you can shake it off and you can step up, because if you just dwell on it and cry about it, pretty soon you're buried alive. and you're not going to go anywhere. And I think that illustrates the point nicely.
It does. And that's the key thing to remember. You can learn optimism. In fact, there's a great assessment, a great book by Dr. Martin Seligman called Learned Optimism, that he says, no, this is a choice. And there's a variety of things. In fact, get your notes out. Let me give you a few things that you can do, because we can all work on this. We've been in downward spirals before. Sometimes we have something happens with the day. We become very pessimistic very fast. So we've talked about we don't blame. One thing you can do is take a look at past success, past victories, have a victory list of things you've accomplished in your life that you're really proud of. Be around optimistic people. Your self-talk. A lot of things you're saying to yourself are very, very negative. We know your thoughts control your emotions control your action. Emotions control your actions. And here's one that a lot of people don't think about. Watch what you eat, stay healthy, and exercise. Because exercise helps you. You have more energy. There's something about that actually increases your optimism, increases your hope, and you have more energy, and people can sense that. And the last one I also mentioned, but I want to mention again, is you need to have the ability to quickly turn that negative mood, that bad attitude, into a positive one. Because if you take 3 hours to do that, you've wasted the whole day. What can you do in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes? Have a ritual, take a walk, talk to somebody, call somebody, listen to humor, whatever works for you. Walking outside, walking in the sunshine, whatever works for you, that is a mark of greatness.
Yeah. And you're basically saying something I was going to say and kind of simplify this, and at the risk of sounding simplistic, but when you have something that happens, because most of our listeners are in sales or influence or marketing of some kind, they have to be pretty motivated people, right? When you're changing people's minds, this isn't like you're punching forms behind a desk, right? You're a hunter. You go out there and you make money. As Brian Tracy has said, nothing happens until somebody makes a sale, right? All these people in your business that are in HR or various other departments, they don't have a job without you. And it does sound simplistic, like I said, but when you have one of those negative experiences, take a break. I mean, physiologically, your brain needs to recover. You need to kind of forget about it and put it behind you. For the other day, I had something like that happen to me too, and it meant I just took the rest of the day off, did some stuff around the house, and I slept. And I, the rest of that day, I was thinking, oh, geez, what a crazy business. Do I even want to do this? And then you wake up the next day and everything is fine, and you didn't risk some bad interactions with other prospects. Now, granted, most of the time you don't have that luxury. You have to recover. You have to do something quick to get back in the optimistic mind frame. But sometimes it's bad enough where you just take the day and then you're fine the next day and you're back to your normal aggressive self, which, like I said, you kind of have to be. If you're listening to this podcast and you're wanting to become a better persuader, it's probably because you're a very motivated person whose income or whose result or satisfaction is tied to production.
And those are good points, and those things that work for people. If it's really bad, maybe it's a nap. If it's really bad, like what happened to you, walk away and you slept. And that's the amazing thing. You wake up in the next morning, you're thinking, all right, let's do it. Not that big of a deal. Let's get back into the game. All right, I've licked my wounds. Let's move on. And there's something about a little nap or good night's sleep that can put you back on track.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else you want to say about optimism before we move on to the next segment of the show?
Yeah, quit looking for possible signs of setback or failure or blame. Try to look for what's right in the world or around you, not for what's wrong. Try to control your relationships a little more and spend more time with optimistic people. Find others that are willing to help you through the bumps in the road. So when you're feeling down, when you're feeling low, you have someone that you can talk to that's going to lift you up, that's optimistic, that has a good attitude, and those are very contagious.
Thanks for listening. To listen to the rest of the podcast or subscribe, it's MaximizeYourInfluence.com.